Thank you all for coming, by the way. This is really cool.
Michael, when did you become interested in classical music to become a composer?
So I was a little kid right about when The Sound of Music came out in theaters. Okay, and in that movie, this great song, Do Re Mi, and says one word for every note by mixing it up like this, right? Yeah. And I was the kind of little kid who loved puzzles and figuring things out, and that's really your first composition lesson in that song.
Wow.
So I grew up thinking, it's one word for every note by mixing it up like this. Seemed simple. And I had piano lessons as a little kid, and I always thought, somebody wrote this. Somebody thought this up. What a puzzle. What a challenge. And so because I liked mental challenges like that, I thought it would be fun to try. And I ended up, you're a little kid, so you get stuck, and then maybe you don't finish something. But finally, I finished something when I was about 14, and then due to some just lucky break, I got that piece performed, and then I was hooked after that.
Okay. What is your education?
So I went to USC. USC grad. Yeah, fight on. Yeah. And if you're from UCLA, that's cool too. We're not all territorial and building walls here. It's all inclusive. And I majored in music composition because I knew that I wanted to do that, and I loved. So in classical music, I think of it as concert music, really, with meaning. And the only difference in the word would be just that. Even though I love writing for orchestra, I don't think of it as being like music like Mozart. I think of it as being like this really great band that can play anything you write down. And that's important when you understand about the music I write and why it sounds the way it does. Because it's an orchestra, but it uses the language of any kind of music that you would have heard, growing up in California today.
I see. Do you have role models in?
Wow. So, yeah, so Duke Ellington would be one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But also John Williams is another one.
Yeah.
Just his music is so emotional and just affects you so much. Really, any composer of any background whose music speaks to your soul, in any form of music, I think is a role model.
Yes. Do you face any special challenges as a person of African descent?
Wow. Well, maybe the short answer is yes. And the long answer is more subtle. There are composers. There's a African-American composer named George Walker, who I'm sure you have known.
Yeah, I know.
And he cites huge discrimination that he faced in his career and people refusing to play his music. I've not had anything like that I've been aware of. And yet, I have felt challenged. And how where that happens is kind of part of what Get Out is about. Mm-hmm. And that was just one of the reasons that I was so thrilled to be a part of that project, because Get Out is the first thing I've seen that talks about how racism is not necessarily someone saying you can't do this or we don't like your kind. It's the more, especially today, it's a more subtle thing. And it's very hard to explain, and I think Get Out actually does a great job of doing that. So anyway. Thanks.
This is the 100th anniversary for the Los Angeles Philharmonic. And it hasn't been publicized yet, but George Walker has been commissioned to do a couple of pieces. Yes, yes.
That's great.
What is the Sphynx Symphony Orchestra? So
the Sphynx Symphony Orchestra is what's a great way to explain this? The Sphynx organization is a group that was founded to promote and support Black and Latino people in concert music. And it was founded in and around Michigan, where its founder, Aaron Dworkin, happened to live. But also there's a great school of music at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And so he thought, well, wouldn't it be great to have a concerto competition exclusively for people of minority descent? And a concerto competition is where you it's a competition. You play a piece of classical music and you do it against other people playing the same thing, and they award a winner. And he said, let's give scholarships to people and let's give them chances to play with orchestras. And so the Sphinx organization started as a concerto competition, but it now also includes, it's been going for over 20 years, and it includes, they call up all of the Black and Latino orchestra players, and they say, wouldn't you like to come and support our concerto competition for these young people of color who are playing concert music? And people say yes, because they understand how inspiring that is and how fortunate they would be to participate in that. And so as a result, Sphynx once a year ends up with an all Black and Latino symphony orchestra. Yeah, and it's something that you just have never seen before. And it's a really powerful, it's a powerful community because the orchestra represents and supports the young people who are playing in front of them, and it's just a life-changing experience for the people who participate. And they also commission artists to write music. And so I am one of the people that they ask to write pieces of music. And I've written a couple pieces for them. One's called Delights and Dances, and the other's called Urban Legends. And these pieces were written to show off the amazing young string players that Sphynx organization attracts and supports. And they ended up being, Urban Legends ended up being, it's on YouTube like everything is. But then there was a guy named Jordan Peele who one day was looking for somebody to score his first film. And he came upon this video of a piece called Urban Legends. And that's how I ended up meeting Jordan.
I see. Well, if Danielle is ready, we will have an opportunity to see Urban Legends with the Sphinx Symphony Orchestra.
Awesome. Can I set up the piece a little bit for
Please.
people? Okay, so this is an orchestral piece called Urban Legends. And the title's kind of a pun because urban becomes this wonderful euphemism for people of color. And so what you're about to see literally are some urban legends in this performance. But it's a piece really about, also, you know, an urban legend in its real meaning is about stories that are larger than life that aren't really true, right? And the thing about urban, we can talk about those more, but the thing about urban legends is they're sort of, a good urban legend is based in fact, and it sounds like it could be true, and it's kind of dramatic, right? That's an urban legend, and it sounds like it could be true, and it's really dramatic, you know, like if there's some story about some child was eaten by a giant rat, you know, like I'm just making that up right now. But that sounds like something like, oh, really? Especially if you read it on the internet, right? So the piece is larger than life. It's really big and over the top. And it's kind of like influenced by all these different styles of music. It's influenced by rock, it's influenced by electronica, it's influenced by jazz, and it starts kind of atonally, and then it kind of builds a pulse, and there's African drums all the way through it, which I like doing. I like doing drums live when I can with orchestra. So there's all this stuff in it, and in the middle kind of hell breaks loose, just like gets really violent kind of, and then we come back. It's in 3 parts, so there's a beginning, and then there's kind of a more electronica type middle, and then hell breaks loose, and it comes back to the beginning. So, oh, and it's for string quartet and orchestra, so you'll see string players out front, and they're the soloists. improvised, but it's not. It's all written out. Deliberately contrasting the aggressiveness of the beginning with this lyrical melody. Now there's a little game of like hacky sack going on with these different little riffs that are shared between the four soloists. Well, maybe not quite yet. Here we go. here's that section of chaos coming up. And this is the recapitulation, which means the return to the A section, which is modified a little, but we're coming back to the beginning. That's the next one. So that piece is a lot to take in on first listen. There's a lot going on. And it's also, that's my most atonal piece of music I've ever written. I really had an opportunity to do some things that were kind of outside what I would normally do. And those players, can I tell you how great they are? It's an extremely difficult piece of music. So, so I was able to do that and do that piece, and it has not been performed since then because it's really difficult and requires, a lot of, an orchestra can't always take that on. But that was the piece, somehow, that Jordan Peele saw when he was looking for a composer for Get Out. And and so you might, if you've seen the movie, you might think, why would anyone think that this guy could do it? Right? It's very different. But what he wanted was, he said, one of the first things he said to me was, about the music for Get Out, he says, it's got to be scarier than shit, he said. And I think, and also he said, I want the African-American voice, both literally and metaphorically in this film. And because of those two things, I think that's why he saw what he was looking for in that video.